Ever get that, like, pit in your stomach feeling right before a big negotiation? Like trying to haggle on, I don't know, a price of something you really want, maybe a used car, or even like an antique chess set online. Ugh,
Yeah.
the worst.
Yeah.
Well, good news is we're diving into Chapter 2 of Mitch Jackson's Master the Art of Negotiation. And let me tell you, he gives us some serious tools to, untangle those nerves and walk in feeling much more confident.
Yeah, it's not about like becoming some hard-nosed negotiator,
Yeah.
right away overnight. It's more about having a strategy that takes you from feeling kind of powerless to feeling like you got this.
Yeah, totally. And Jackson really lays out that strategy well. He says, crafting a negotiation strategy is akin to weaving a complex tapestry where every thread is a deliberate choice.
Oh, wow.
I love that.
That's a really cool way to put it.
Yeah.
It's so true. Like each choice, each tactic, it's all part of this bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's why just, winging it,
Right.
it rarely works out the way we want.
Never. And that brings us to his 7-step framework. Step 1, set clear objectives. Okay. Sounds kind of obvious, right?
Right.
But have you ever gone into a negotiation without that, like, crystal clear picture of what you actually want to get?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
And you just end up like
Exactly.
kind of meandering around, and you're not really sure if you even got a good deal or not.
You just get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like setting out on a trip without like putting the destination in your GPS.
Exactly.
You might end up somewhere.
Right.
But is it the right place? Probably not.
And that's where he brings in that SMART acronym. He says your objective needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. This isn't some wishy-washy, I want more situation. It's about like really defining what more actually looks like,
Right. You gotta take those vague desires and turn them into concrete like goals.
Yeah.
And even if we're perfect on that SMART goals thing, stuff happens in negotiations, right?
Oh.
They don't always go according to plan. And that's why step 2, know your BTNA, is so, so crucial.
Okay, break it down. What is a BTNA? Why should we care?
Okay, so think of your BTNA or best alternative to a negotiated agreement as your get-out-of-jail-free card.
Okay.
It's your backup plan if the negotiation goes, totally south. Let's say you're back at that car dealership and the price is just, like, not budging.
Right.
If you already scoped out a similar car at another dealership for a better price, boom, that's your BTNA.
Yeah.
It gives you the power to walk away if you need to.
So it's almost like having a safety net, so you're not, desperate.
Exactly.
Like knowing you have other options, already lined up that can make you a much more confident negotiator.
100%, yeah.
Even if you don't end up having to use that BTNA.
Even if you don't use it.
Yeah.
It's all about options and leverage. But even with a strong BTNA, you still got to understand the playing field, right? And that's where step 3 comes in. Analyze the situation.
Ooh. Okay. So, time to put on our detective hats.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yes, absolutely. This step is all about, like, digging deeper, understanding the other party's motivations, their constraints, what makes them tick,
Right.
And it's not just about what they say, it's about what they don't say. Their body language, their tone, it all kind of paints a picture.
So we got to be paying attention to those subtle cues, those nonverbal things, that can say so much. It's like reading between the lines, right?
100%.
To understand what's really going on.
Yeah. The more information we gather, the better we can tailor our approach.
Yeah.
But gathering information is just one part. We also need to figure out how we want to play the game. And that brings us to step 4. Choose your negotiation style.
Ooh, okay. This is where I think things are going to get really good, right? It's not just about what we want. It's how we go about getting it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's definitely no like one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to negotiation styles.
Oh.
Jackson talked about a few, like competitive, collaborative, compromising.
Right.
Each one has its strengths and weaknesses. Right. And choosing like the right one for the situation can, make or break the deal.
It's like choosing the right tool from like a toolbox,
Totally. Yeah.
You wouldn't use like a hammer to put in a screw.
Exactly.
So how do we know which style is best then for what we're trying to do?
Well, it goes back to those objectives that we were talking about.
Right.
And the context of the negotiation, right? Like, let's say you're dealing with, a one-time purchase, like buying that antique chess set that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
A more competitive style might be like totally suitable if your only goal is to get, the absolute lowest price possible.
Okay.
But if you're negotiating like a long-term contract with a supplier, you might want to go with a more collaborative approach.
Right, yeah, you want them to, like, want to work with you,
Exactly.
not, like, hate you.
You want it to be a win-win, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's about building trust and finding solutions that work for everybody.
All right.
Negotiation isn't always about, being this, like, tough, squeezing every penny out of the other person kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes it's about, coming to a solution that works well for everyone.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've analyzed the situation, chosen our style. What's next? What do we do?
Preparation.
Yeah.
Preparation.
Yeah.
Step 5, prepare thoroughly. This is where we roll up our sleeves and do our homework.
Okay.
Jackson actually, he likens it to a lawyer preparing for, like, a trial.
Oh, wow.
You need to try to anticipate,
Yeah.
like, the other side's arguments, their objections, their tactics.
So it's about knowing not just what we want, but what they might say.
Yes.
And, like, having a plan to, like, counter that.
Exactly. Yeah, have a counter move ready.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, you're back at that car dealership,
Yeah.
did your research.
Right.
You know what a fair price for the car is.
Right.
You've also prepared, like, counter arguments to those common dealer tactics that they like to use, like, oh, we got to mark up the price because of this, or that trade-in value. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So having all that prepped beforehand helps you stay calm and collected when, things start to get a little heated.
It's like having that mental script ready
Yeah.
for any possible scenario.
Exactly.
I like it.
Having those tools in your bolt.
Okay, all right. So moving on to step 6, choose the right communication method. I feel like this is a really important one these days,
Oh, for sure.
especially with all the ways that we have to communicate now.
Totally, yeah. We got face-to-face, phone calls, emails, Zoom, like all these different things.
Right, smoke signals.
Carrier pigeons.
Right, exactly.
But for real, each method has its own, like, pluses and minuses, and it's about choosing the one that works best for, what we've already talked about, like your overall strategy and your objectives.
Right, so like a face-to-face meeting might be good for a certain situation, but then if it's like, just buying that antique chess set online,
Right.
that might be something where you just do email.
Exactly.
So how do we choose? Like, how do we know?
I think thinking about that face-to-face one, I think that's really good when you're trying to build that rapport,
Right,
that
like,
trust.
especially if it's like a long-term.
Especially if it's ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you'd be working together. You got to have that relationship.
Yeah.
But if it's, like you said, something simple, like a one-time transaction, then email. Quick, easy, get it done.
Yeah, and then you don't have to worry about like, how you're coming across or your facial expressions or.
Right. All those nonverbal cues, which
Yeah.
are super important if you are face-to-face.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like a well-timed smile or a nod,
Totally.
can go a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're doing it remotely, make sure your writing is clear and you can get your point across so there's no miscommunication.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're down to the wire here.
Okay.
Tell me about step 7. Create a negotiation agenda.
So I love this.
Okay.
Jackson compares it to having a roadmap for the negotiation.
Okay.
It's about having that clear plan for how the conversation is going to go
Yeah.
and to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Right.
And that the conversation, moves along.
Right. It's not just like all over the place.
Yeah, you're not just like shooting from the hip and
Right.
it keeps it nice and organized.
Yeah. It's like having that mental checklist. You have
Exactly.
all the points that you got to hit.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, you are negotiating a new contract.
Sure.
With a client. Your agenda might look like this. Okay, we're going to discuss the scope of the work, the payment, deadlines, and then any other like what ifs. And that agenda is really going to keep that conversation laser focused.
Yeah.
And help prevent, those important details from slipping through the cracks. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's so easy to get off track and,
Totally.
So having that agenda really helps.
So it sounds like if we follow these 7 steps, we're basically guaranteed a successful negotiation every time, right?
Wow.
Or am I getting a little ahead of myself here?
I mean, you're on the right track.
Okay.
You're definitely thinking about the right things, but here's the catch.
Yeah.
Real-life negotiations are rarely as predictable as we'd like them to be.
Oh, okay.
And that's why, in addition to these steps, we also need to talk about adaptability.
Okay, so it's not enough to have just a plan A.
Yeah.
We got to have B, C, D.
You got it.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we're learning these like perfectly choreographed dance steps,
Right.
but we also got to be ready to like freestyle a little bit if they like
there.
change the music.
Right.
Yeah, so no matter how well we like rehearse and prepare,
Right.
there are always going to be those unexpected things that pop up.
Yeah.
You know, the other side might come back with some crazy counteroffer that you never even like thought of.
Right.
Or like
Yeah.
the whole vibe of the negotiation might change.
Yeah.
You know, get a little heated.
Right.
And that's where being adaptable is really key.
So how do we get better at that?
Right.
Like, is that something, are we born with that? Or is that something we can, like, train ourselves to do?
Oh, it's totally a skill. You can definitely learn it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is like being really present in the moment
Okay.
and observant.
Okay.
You know, like really paying attention to the other person.
Yeah.
What are they saying? How are they saying it? What's their body language saying?
Right.
Like, are they into what we're saying, or are they like getting defensive?
So it's about reading the room. Right.
Yeah.
And, like, being ready to shift gears if you need to.
100%. Yeah. And remember, like, even if you've chosen that like super collaborative style,
Right.
you still might need to change it up if the other person comes in like really aggressive.
Right.
You know, the key is to stay flexible.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to like go off script.
Yeah, it's almost like that, like, we're playing chess, you know?
Yes.
You got to be ready for whatever they're going to do
Exactly.
and counter that. Yeah.
And, you know, speaking of like, you know, the strategy and everything,
Right.
this all ties into what Jackson calls the mind game of negotiation.
Ooh. Okay.
He says that, like, understanding the psychology of what's going on.
Right.
Like the unspoken things,
Right.
the emotional stuff going on underneath.
Right.
It's just as important as those 7 steps.
So it's not just about, like, the words themselves. It's like our tone.
Yeah.
How we're coming across.
Body language, everything.
Yeah, and how we react
Oh,
to
yeah.
what they're saying. Okay.
100%. Yeah, think about, like, have you ever been in a situation where you were trying to, like, I don't know, negotiate with your kids to get them to eat their vegetables?
Oh, yeah.
Or, like, convince a friend to see a movie?
Right.
Did you notice how, like, how you said something, like, the words you chose
Totally.
changed how they responded?
It's amazing how much that stuff matters, even if we're not even thinking about it.
It's huge, and it's so unconscious. So
Yeah, totally.
that's why, like, just being aware of ourselves and how we communicate is really key.
Okay. Yeah.
If we understand our own, like, tendencies, our triggers, we can be more in control of how we react when things get, you know, a little tense.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because that's going to happen. You know,
Thanks.
it's not always going to be smooth sailing.
Totally. And I think sometimes, you know, we hear about like negotiation and we think like, oh, that's for like, you know, CEOs or like big time lawyers.
Right, exactly.
But the thing is we negotiate all the time in our lives,
Every day,
whether we realize it or not.
all the time.
Right. It's true.
So this is actually, like, super relevant, like, for everybody listening, no matter what you do.
100%. Yeah. Like just think about it.
Yeah.
Have you ever like tried to convince your partner to go to that restaurant that you really want to try?
Right.
Or maybe asked your boss for a raise or more responsibility?
Totally.
Those are all negotiations, even if we don't call it that.
Exactly.
Or like you said, even if you're just trying to get a better price on something you're buying online,
Totally.
that's a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
So having these tools that we talked about today,
Right.
these 7 steps, knowing the importance of being able to go with the flow,
Right.
that can help you no matter what you're negotiating in your life.
It's almost like a superpower.
Totally.
Once you know how to do it.
Right. It gives you the confidence to like go after what you want.
Totally. Yeah. And actually get it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So as we kind of wrap up this dive into chapter 2 of Master the Art of Negotiation,
Yes.
What's like the one thing you want listeners to take away from this?
I would say, like, the 2 most important things are to be prepared, but also be adaptable. Like, those 2 things go hand in hand.
Okay.
You can't just be, like, super rigid,
Right.
but you also got to have a plan.
Right. So find that balance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly than that, I would say
Okay.
negotiation doesn't have to be this, like, big, scary thing.
Right.
It can be collaborative. It can be fun, even,
Okay.
you know, if you go into it with the right mindset.
I like that. I like that a lot. So it should be like almost like a dance
Yeah.
rather than like a fight.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, if you're interested in learning more about mastering the art of negotiation,
Yes.
make sure you check out Mitch Jackson's book,
So good.
full of great stuff in there. And yeah, until next time.